A soldier jolts awake in the dark, soaked in sweat, heart hammering hard. He has been home from war for 6 long years. The explosion that killed his closest friend happened 2,000 days ago. Yet tonight, in the dark, it detonates again. Sound, heat, the smell of burning metal, all replaying in merciless detail. His brain will simply not let him forget. Why does your mind cling to pain like a dog with a bone? While last Tuesday's breakfast vanishes without a trace. Most people assume painful memories stick because we dwell on them. We replay the accident, the breakup, the humiliation again and again. Each replay etches the groove deeper inside your mind. If you keep watching the same movie, you always remember the plot. So the fix should be simple. Stop thinking about it. Distract yourself. Move on, accept that willpower alone never works. Anyone who has tried to suppress a terrible memory knows the punchline. The harder you shove it down, the harder it punches back. Psychologists call this the rebound effect. Telling your brain not to think about the explosion is like saying, do not picture a pink elephant. So if willpower is not the answer, what is actually happening inside your skull? The real story begins 200,000 years ago. Your ancestor walks through tall grass and steps on a snake. The bite nearly kills her. Her brain now faces a critical choice. File that near-death experience alongside last week's sunset, or stamp it in red ink and bolt it to her consciousness forever. Evolution picked option 2. Humans who forgot which berries were poisonous simply did not become anyone's ancestors. Pain became priority mail. The brain's department responsible for stamping those urgent red ink priority labels is a tiny almond-shaped cluster of neurons. The amygdala. Think of the amygdala as your brain's smoke alarm. When you face something terrifying, it floods the scene with cortisol and adrenaline. It essentially screams at your memory system, record everything. Now forever, brain scans show it lighting up like a bonfire during threat. Patients whose amygdala is damaged can stare at a snarling predator and feel nothing, no fear. And crucially, no strong memory afterward. The smoke alarm is disconnected, so the fire never gets logged. A brilliant system, until life overwhelms it beyond what it was designed for. This system was built for a world where you might meet that snake once in a lifetime. It was never designed for modern war. During World War I, casualty rates hit a staggering 56%. Survivors came home with minds stuck on relentless, merciless repeat. Doctors then called it shell shock, a mind like a broken projector nobody could switch off. Nightmares every night, panic at every loud noise. By the Vietnam War era, the condition finally had a formal name: post-traumatic stress disorder. The amygdala had become an unwilling torturer. The amygdala, that brilliant alarm, faithfully stamped and recorded. Except the threat was long over, and the recordings kept playing anyway. There is even a bizarre side effect called weapon focus. When a crime involves a gun, witnesses remember that weapon in extraordinary detail. Witnesses recall every scratch on the barrel months later, but ask what the attacker was actually wearing, and they draw a complete blank. The amygdala zoomed its lens onto the threat and blurred everything else. Useful for survival. Absolutely terrible for a police lineup identification. So how do you treat a memory system that is simply too good at its job? The answer sounds paradoxical, and it changes everything. Instead of pushing the memory away, which only feeds the rebound, therapists ask patients to walk straight into the fear itself. In exposure therapy, a clinician reconstructs elements of the traumatic scene and has the patient sit calmly inside that careful recreation. Session after session, the anxiety deflates like air leaking slowly from a tire. The memory remains, but its emotional charge drains completely away. A related technique called testimony therapy works on the same principle. Survivors narrate their experience aloud, as if testifying in a courtroom. Speaking the memory aloud, owning it completely, strips it of its power. The projector finally stops its relentless loop and falls silent. Think about that. The cure for a memory you cannot forget is to remember it deliberately and completely until your brain reclassifies it. From active threat to closed file, the brain updates its records, and the emergency stamp slowly fades from that once terrifying memory forever. And that soldier, sitting up in bed, heart pounding, trapped inside a 6-year-old explosion. His amygdala is doing exactly what evolution built it to do. It is protecting him from a danger that no longer exists. A smoke alarm screaming faithfully in an empty kitchen, doing its ancient job. The remarkable thing is not that he cannot forget. Somewhere inside the human brain's ancient architecture, there is a clear path back to silence. He just has to walk toward the fire, not away from it. And somewhere in that design, silence is waiting patiently for him to arrive.